National 5 Biology, Life on Earth, video number 1 about ecosystems. An ecosystem consists of all the organisms or the community living in a particular habitat and the non-living components with which the organisms interact. Species are organisms of the same species that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Biodiversity is the number and variety of species in a habitat or ecosystem. The population, the number of individuals of a species living in an area. The producer is a plant. This makes the energy for the food chain by photosynthesis. A consumer is an organism which eats other organisms for food. A herbivore is a consumer which eats plants. A carnivore is a consumer which eats other animals. An omnivore is a consumer which eats both plants and other animals. And a predator is a consumer which hunts other animals. The prey is the animal hunted by the predator. If we look at food chains and food webs, a food chain is the linear flow of energy from a producer to an apex predator in a habitat or ecosystem. A food web is all the interconnected food chains in a habitat or ecosystem. If we were to consider now this food web here, grasses are eaten by rabbits, and rabbits, for example, are eaten by hawk. If the rabbits were to be somehow removed from the food web, this would have a knock-on effect to all the other organisms. The hawk would have less food. It might affect also the foxes, which would have to rely on hunting mice to gain most of their energy, and that would bring them in competition with the owls. So the removal of a single organism from a food web will have an effect on all the other organisms in that food web. A niche is the role that an organism plays within a community. It relates to the resources it requires in its ecosystem, such as light and nutrient availability, and its interactions with other organisms in the community. It involves competition and predation and the conditions it can tolerate, such as temperature. If we were to consider a wild cat, its niche, for example, it would prey on smaller mammals and are prey themselves to larger predators. They are also a host to a range of different parasites. The Scots pine provides a habitat and a food supply for many organisms, including birds and insects. Organisms will compete with one another for resources they need, particularly if these things are in short supply. Plants, for example, compete for light, water, and soil nutrients. Animals will compete for water, food, shelter, nesting sites, and mates. Interspecific competition occurs amongst individuals of different species for one or a few of the resources they require. Intraspecific competition occurs amongst individuals of the same species and is for all the resources required. Intraspecific competition is therefore more intense than interspecific competition.